All right, well, this is pretty cool for me because it's the first time I've actually given a talk at my own venue. So I've had this place for like a year and a half. And if you guys didn't know, Frontend Masters was last year. And it was 6 Fridays, 6 full workshops. And everybody else talked, but I didn't talk. So anyways, but here we are. And I'm going to talk to you about jQuery mobile today. So who am I? I'm Marc Grabanski. How many of you have used the jQuery UI date picker? So pretty much most of you. Yeah, so I created that. So my background is in open source, and then I blogged for about 5 years on marcgrabanski.com. Built up an audience there, enjoyed teaching a lot. And I've done lots and lots of user interface development. I've probably built over 50 different web application interfaces over the last 5 years. I've really done a ton. So point is about that is please, please, please ask me questions. I will give you a candid opinion on anything. And that's my main strength is answering your questions. So what do I do? What is this? So this is MJG International, where you're at right now. And it's basically the people I trust around the world. And I hire people, so my role is talent evangelist. So I've spoken around 40 different events, and I get to meet people all around the world. And I just look for really great developers and designers, usually freelance, and then we do projects together. So that's what I do here, and run events, of course. And then I'm also, as I mentioned, user interface developer. So the great promise of the web to me was that everyone can view it. So when HTML5 came out as a marketing buzzword, everybody was wow, HTML5. Well, it's some new features to the web platform that we've always had. And when I originally started developing websites, it was my original impetus was, wow, I can put up a web page and anybody in the world can see it. So that was my original impetus of wanting to be good at programming and delivering content through the web. And so, yeah, just everything that I do stems from that point, and so when native apps come along, great, you can expand your audience, but the one thing we have is the web, and for everyone to be able to view content. So that when I look at jQuery mobile, it actually embraces that philosophy, right? Publishing something on the web, everybody can see it. And jQuery mobile really embraces all of what the web is and delivers it so that it works on mobile and tablet and desktop. And it works on even older devices because of the use of progressive enhancement, which I'll get into. But the major common misperception of jQuery mobile is that it's jQuery mobile, so it must make my mobile website, and that's all it's there for. But really, it's not mobile only, it's mobile first. So you can start with a mobile website that works on mobile, and then you can use media queries to make it work across desktop. And you'll see me reiterate this over and over and over again. So when I look at the homepage of jQueryMobile.com, where it has the 3 separate mobile devices, I really think that they should include desktop because it's fully tested, it works across desktop as well, and we'll get into it. So sourcing my sources, I went to Filament Group, and I spent a couple of days in Boston, and I talked to Scott Gell and Todd Parker. I was about to give a talk, and they're the creators of, essentially the creators of jQuery Mobile. And I went out to talk to them about it because I had some misperceptions of my own about the project, and I really wanted to ask them questions and figure out, well, do I really want to get behind this project? Because I've been a long advocate of jQuery. Since it originally came out, I've been using it. jQuery UI, obviously, I created the date picker and contributed a lot to that project. But jQuery Mobile came out, and I wasn't really sure about the project. There's a lot of things that I wasn't really sure about. So I asked these guys, and they really answered the questions I had. And so out of that, I came out with my reasons why to use jQuery Mobile. I'll be telling you those today. So I broke these down to 4 main reasons to use jQuery Mobile. One is the Ajaxified navigation. So the first thing you'll notice about jQuery Mobile, if you use the documentation or use anything, is that it'll throw up a spinner, and then it'll load in content, and currently it fades in. And so that's a little bit different, but I'll get into why that's good. But the primary reason is that you'll get faster subsequent page requests, meaning there's the initial payload to the phone, and then you're fetching just the HTML with each new page request. So instead of going to that HTML document, reloading, re-downloading, or pulling the JavaScript from cache, maybe downloading some more scripts, whatever, and then initializing it and rendering it to the view, you're just grabbing that little piece of HTML and then rendering it with the JavaScript that's already existing in the page, the CSS that's already existing. So it eliminates that those subsequent, or makes the new page requests faster. The second thing is the layout and theming engine. You'll see a lot of the default jQuery mobile theme. I'm not really too interested in that. At the very least, use Theme Roller, which you can customize the colors. But basically, and then it gives you basically these CSS classes that you can extend and do whatever you want with it. So you can really customize this, but it gives you a really nice, rich base to work from. And I'll get into more of the benefits of that later. As far as inputs, that's the #1 thing where I started using websites on mobile, and you would get to a form and there would be a checkbox. And how do you hit that checkbox? Well, you got to zoom in, zoom in, zoom in, zoom in, and then hit it. And, oh, I missed it. It's just a complete pain. So what jQuery Mobile does is it enhances all of those default form inputs and makes them very touch friendly. It makes them just really chunky tab target, so it's a lot easier to hit that checkbox. You can hit the label, and it's not just the label, it's that whole item there is clickable. And then also with something like a range input, you can have sliders, there's switches, there's all sorts of ways that you can enter in data into your website or your web application much, much easier on a mobile device. And then the fourth is the widest browser coverage. This is what I was talking about earlier and just hammering over and over again, is that I want the web to work everywhere. And I want a framework that's going to embrace the web and all that it has to offer. I want to be able to copy and paste the links, send them to friends, and I want them to work, and these kinds of things. And jQuery Mobile, to me, is the web living up to its promise. It works everywhere, and it has the widest amount of browser coverage due to progressive enhancement. So if you look at, this is actually their testing lab. When I went and saw it in person, it was definitely not lined up all nice, but it was more like a big pile of cords and cables and phones. But whatever. This is their testing lab. These are the devices that they test on regularly. So to me, one of the biggest advantages of starting with jQuery Mobile as a base is you get all that testing for free. I mean, you're not going to do that. I mean, maybe you'll go grab a couple Android phones or an iPhone or a couple different devices, right? But you're not going to go through that laborious process of making everything work. All these base essential components of the web like form inputs and all these, work well on all of these devices. And so by starting with jQuery Mobile, you get that for free, and you can build on top of that. Yes, the more customization you're going to do, you're going to have to test that as well, but at least you get a huge amount of testing for free when you start with it. This, I don't think it's updated. I should have updated that before this talk, but basically you get a wider range of Windows Phone, iOS, Android, mobile Opera, mobile Firefox, obviously mobile Chrome works well. But what I want you to focus on is the bottom, which is desktop Chrome, Firefox, IE 7 Plus, Opera. jQuery Mobile actually works on desktop. And I think that's definitely a misperception that a lot of people carry with them when they look at the project. Progressive enhancement. So this is what I've referred to a few times before, but with progressive enhancement, old C grade, your old Nokia bricks, at least that's what I call it because it was kind of like a brick. But if you were able to open that web browser and hit your page, you'll at least get some HTML. You'll get basic HTML. And then if there's basically a grading system where before they created jQuery Mobile, John Resig went and did a whole lot of research on all the different browsers that are, the state of browsers in phones. And then he basically found out what their capabilities are and then rated them A grade, C grade, B grade, right? And in this case, B grade gets the enhanced style, but not the Ajax stuff. So I think I was building a jQuery mobile app that worked on older versions of Android, and the Ajax stuff didn't work, but it was still usable. And so that was excellent. Like, it didn't have the push state, but it was still usable, which is great. So that's B grade. And then A grade, which gets the full enhanced styling, the Ajax navigation, what I talked about earlier, and then full CSS transitions. And a note about CSS transitions, actually I'll get into that a little bit later, but the point of this is that you'll always see something. No matter if you're using some crappy device and you need to look up some information, you'll at least get some HTML. And then if you have a great, a nice phone or that has decent support for CSS, it'll get the styling. And then if you have a top of the line phone, you'll obviously get everything, or the browsers that I mentioned before. The project itself is very much alive. There's tons and tons of things that are being released on jQuery Mobile. It's like I see something new every day. And if you want to take a look at some examples, you can go to jqmgallery.com. They continuously add different examples of people using jQuery Mobile. And the project is growing. That A, I think, is jQuery Mobile 1.2 was released, and so it just kind of spiked up. But it's just continually growing and growing and growing. And when I look at the web app frameworks out there, I typed in everything, every framework that I could ever think of. I think I had a list of like 15 different mobile frameworks. And I was trying to find something to show up on the map in comparison to jQuery Mobile and Sencha. And there just really is nothing. I mean, that green little goo, like just tiny little quibble, that's other frameworks. And no matter what I typed in, it was like that. Really, when it comes to a mobile-ready web framework, there's really only two popular options. Anybody use Sencha? There's a couple. So jQuery Mobile and Sencha, people always ask, what should I use? Marc, you're a jQuery Mobile advocate. What should I use? I know Sencha is pretty popular, but to me, they take two completely different philosophies. jQuery Mobile is web first, as I mentioned, work everywhere, use progressive enhancement, grade the browsers and serve them different functionality or abilities. So that's jQuery Mobile's philosophy, but Sench's is different, and it's more of an app first. Let's try to take all of the things of native apps and replicate them with HTML5 as closely as possible. So you'll see if you go to Sench's website on an iPhone, you get incredibly rich UI components. Like it's really nice. It works really nice on iPhone. That's what they targeted. So you can use HTML5 to make native feeling apps. But where that falls down is that you're not going to get the browser support and coverage. They're targeting WebKit only, and that's even, I mean, supporting WebKit's so fragmented. That's even really difficult to do. So really, it's a really small subset of WebKit browsers that they're targeting, and they're trying to push the web forward as much as possible and make it feel native. And I'm really happy that there's someone out there that's really trying to push the web platform to the nth degree of what it's capable of. But it's not the same philosophy. It's let's try to make it really rich and work on a small subset of devices that we test. I know they say they support Android, but anybody I know, people who are spending lots of money building Sencha applications, they're having a hard time with a lot of different versions of Android and different flavors and stuff like that. And yeah, Android is difficult to test, but when you add these rich components, it gets even more difficult. So those are the kind of two major frameworks and their philosophies. So if you're anybody have any questions about that? No? Okay. So one cool thing is that Adobe's really supported jQuery Mobile. I think they sponsor like 1 or 2 developers. And they're really embedding jQuery Mobile into all of their creative suite like Dreamweaver and whatnot. But more than that, I'm just happy that Adobe's supporting the project and giving actual developer time to the project. If you want to take a look at the latest bleeding edge demo of jQuery Mobile, you can go to jQueryMobile.com/test. This is going to be pretty much the same as the current release. I was using this more right before jQuery 1.2 was released, because 1.2 has some new widgets and whatnot. But if the stable release is like 1.1 and they're really about to release 1.2, you can go there to see the latest. And that's nice to know about. So how do I use jQuery Mobile? Well, it's basically, in my mind, it's one more magical file. I mean, most of us are using jQuery in our websites already, and we're familiar with how that works. But including the jQuery Mobile framework is basically just including another file. There's not like a special jQuery flavor, mobile flavor of jQuery or whatever. It's a separate file that contains all the logic for the framework. So if you want to get started with it, you basically include the CSS and then both jQuery and jQuery Mobile. So let's dive into those 4 points that I mentioned a little bit deeper. So the Ajaxified navigation. Personally, I had one of these moments where it was like, magnets, how do they work, right? There's like 3 Snickers of people who get this, but I was really confused by it. One person really laughing. Got one person, yes. Anyway, but yeah, that's all right. But I just didn't understand it. What is this doing to my web page? But what it does do is it looks at the href and the action in your HTML, and then it enhances it with this Ajaxified navigation. So in this case, if I have a link with an href to page.html, unless I add an attribute to that link, data ajax equals false, it will do this, which I'm describing, which it will grab the new content and it will update the URL in the actual address bar. it will grab that HTML with AJAX. So it'll just be one simple AJAX request. And what it will do for the page is it'll look inside your body for an element with data role equals page, and it will grab the content inside that. Or if it doesn't see that, it will actually bubble up to the body. So it will use the body, anything inside the body element. So let's take a look how this works. If you've got a link, so say we're on index.html right now. If you've got a link and you click it, it will load in that new page off to the side, or basically in a div right off to the side. And depending on what transition you have, it will slide that in. Currently, the default theme or the default transition is fade, but initially when like alpha came out, it was slide. But now this will just fade in the new page. There is a number of page transitions. I can open up the docs here and show you some of them. So we've got pop, the dialog, slide, fade. There's a couple of new ones in jQuery Mobile 1.2, like flow, which would be useful for like a wizard, a step wizard in a form or something like that. And then sliding up, sliding down, whatever. So to use those different transitions, you just add data transition equals whatever the transition key is to your links. I mentioned this default transition is now fade. Back in alpha, when it was sliding, I thought fade was more webby, anyways. So I used that even back in the early days. Another thing people say, well, I don't want that loading indicator. I want just a page to come in and do the transition. Well, what you can do is you can embed other pages inside your page, right? You can add data role equals page to two other, in this case, two other whole pages, and then you can use, just like we've always done on the web with content IDs or just the hash. You just use the hash and then put in the ID of the div you want to go to, and that will instantly load that new page into your current page. And so it won't throw the loading indicator. It will be ready to right away. But you're increasing your payload of your initial HTML. So the other way that you can do something similar is you can add data prefetch attribute to a new link. So say if I'm on index.html and I know typically people go to page2.html, then you can just add data prefetch to that link, and jQuery mobile after window load will go in and prefetch that new HTML, and it will be ready for the user. So that's another strategy. A major complaint when people were first getting into jQuery mobile is that, well, I don't like that it uses all these crap URLs, right? Well, then they implemented pushDate, or used pushDate, which pushes a full URL into the browser. So in this case, old browsers will still see the hash slash the page URL, but new browsers that support pushDate, which is a lot of them now, will just update the URL. So you might see like a very split second, it'll use the hash with the full path to the new page, just for a couple milliseconds, and then it'll push in the new URL. Where this is nice is if you are on an old Android phone or a browser that doesn't support pushDate, and you go to the new page, in this case foo.html, and you copy that whole path and you send it to your friend, it will actually still work. It will load in index.html, and then it will, on the new browser, it'll push in foo.html into your URL bar. So it works with the web. Forms are auto-AJAX as well. So your action attribute will So if you post to page.html, whatever the response is, it will pull that in as well. One tip though, personally, I don't use auto Ajax forms. In real life, real world applications, you want validation and server-side validation. Do it like you've always done with Ajax, which is get a post to the server, get a response. Maybe it has some validation messages. Show it on the page. If you do this auto Ajax thing, the way that you would have to do it is you would have to. So say there's a validation error, you'd have to reset all of the data back into the form in your HTML, and then you have 2 pages, and now you're stepping back through the form, which doesn't make any sense. So to me, I always disable, and you can use there's a global form Ajax disable thing. I recommend using that, and because it causes a lot of confusion from my experience. Yeah, so if you disable it, then you'll have to handle all of that yourself with Ajax, right? So with JavaScript, you'll send the data, you'll hijack the submit method and send the data to your server. Your server will respond with validation messages, and then you decorate the form with those validation errors, right? Because otherwise, you'll end up with several pages, and each page for each validation state. And then, as you click back, you're going through your own state of forms, form entry, which to me doesn't make any sense. And also, like, server-side developers that are building a new form with jQuery mobile, they'll be like, what is going on? I don't understand. Like, now the new page is coming in, and I have form errors, and now I have 2 pages. It just, from my experience working with server-side developers in real-world situations, you just don't get the whole Ajax form thing. And to me, I don't really get it either. So that's just personal opinion there. The second is the layout and theming engine. And this is, to me, I think this is really, really incredible to have CSS classes that make sense, that you can extend, and then also easily change the colors and theming is really, really important to an application, especially getting started right away. So how this works is it's looking at your data dash attributes. So data dash. I'm talking about layout and theming here. I'm going to talk about how you lay out a page and then also how you theme it. So jQuery Mobile in general is looking at your data dash attributes, right? In this case, there's all these different roles. So you can use data dash role to specify different sections of your page. So you've got your page, you've got your header, content, footer, list view, list divider, there's just all these different roles, and that's how jQuery Mobile works. Is it looks at your role, and then it will generate some markup and make that behave a little bit differently. It'll enhance it, right? So here's the structure of a normal jQuery Mobile page. I should probably update that to use header and footer elements with HTML5, but you get the concept here. I call them the magical markup zones. It's just, whatever. So we've got the doc structure, which honestly I think the docs are a great reference for jQuery Mobile. They did a great job. So you can inspect any of these pages. You can go to the jQuery Mobile doc, view source, and take a look at how they constructed each of these pages. In this case, obviously we've got a page and content, nothing special there. With the list view, we're just taking a list and adding data dash role equals list view, and then that will inject the CSS classes that make this list view look the way it does. And then you can add list divider, which obviously makes the header colors there. So theming, this is what I was starting to talk about earlier. Basically just do data-theme equals A, B, C, D, E, F, or whatever. There's actually, you can keep building your own themes if you want to. You can actually add element themes, so like divider theme. I think there's like a list view theme, but I don't know. To me, those are kind of hard to remember. So if you use data-theme, it will actually just propagate that theme through all the components inside of what you've declared, where you've declared that theme. So if it's on the top of the page, everything inside that page is going to be that theme. But if it's somewhere inside, it will just propagate inside wherever you declared it. And then data-inset equals true. People use inset all the time, and that just makes it from a box to like rounded corners with, like you see in the docs here. So yeah, obviously list theme just changes the theme. I'm going to pound through this. There's some class themes. So in this case, you can have like content bars and content blocks. And those are, you would actually just use the classes instead of the attribute. With the docs, it's just basically got divider theme and data inset true on a couple of lists. So a thing that I've advocated for since the beginning is using this for responsive design. And the jQuery mobile docs is definitely the first, and Josh will be doing a whole talk on responsive design next. But the docs is actually the first kind of example of this, where this doesn't come inside the box of jQuery mobile, but they wrap some classes around 2 sections, and then if it's over a certain width, they use a media query to stack them next to each other. So this is an example of using responsive design to make it work. The docs work really well on desktop, and so just keep that in mind. jQuery mobile theme roller. So this is what I was talking about earlier as far as theming is a matter of actually Josh mentioned Cooler. It's actually built right into the jQuery mobile theme roller. So I can take this color scheme and I can just start dragging and dropping onto the different jQuery mobile pieces of jQuery mobile, and it will create a theme for me. So in a very, very short period of time, I created my own custom theme using theme roller. And so now every time I see the default theme, I'm like, why? This is so easy. You just drag and drop a few colors from Cooler, and you've got a completely custom theme that matches in with your branding. So like start there. Whenever you use a jQuery mobile, or whenever you use jQuery mobile, like start there. Just customize your colors, download them. Your web app will feel a lot more custom right away. And then, of course, with the theming I mentioned, you get reusable CSS classes that you can apply to other elements, or you can extend and add your own custom stuff. So I do that all the time. I just take a typical jQuery mobile class and I'll extend it with a couple of my own styles. So it's nice to start with it as a base. The next point is the reusable widgets. So I'm going to kind of hammer through these real quick. You can go through the docs yourself and dig into them more in depth. But you've got buttons. You can add, jQuery mobile comes with a set of icons. So you can just use these icons. You can put data-icon equals plus on your button, and it will just add that icon to your button. And then you can add inline buttons. Just do data inline equals true. So everything is driven with these data attributes, as I mentioned before. With dialogues, they basically, when you have a link that's going to somewhere else, like say page.html, you can have it be a normal page, or in some cases it makes sense to make it a dialogue. So you literally just use data rel equals dialog, and you've got a dialog. It just it pulls the corners, from the edges a little bit, adds an overlay in the back, and the close button. So I've used this. It just behaves basically like a regular jQuery mobile page. And then I think it pops out as the transition. So with control groups, you've got buttons. They can stack horizontally. I think by default, if you have a control group, it stacks vertically. And then you can just do data type equals horizontal, and you get a horizontal button set. Nav bars with icons. They can make it feel a little bit more like native menus, I guess. You can make these fixed, but of course fixed only works in like iOS 5 up, and fixed is really tough, but they kind of handle the degradation of this. So you can use fixed headers, but it will just fall back to being on the top of your page at the bottom of your page for older browsers that don't support fixed. The filter bar, it's basically just client-side filtering, like really, really quickly. You just add data-filter equals true to your list, and it will add that search bar above your list, and it'll use client-side filtering to get to the list item that you want to really quickly. The pop-up widget is really awesome. I just used that like last week. I'm having a hard time getting back to the browser. Okay. So the pop-up widget is really nice. You can have tooltips. You can embed whole forms like a sign-in form, dialogue, photo gallery. You do lots of really, really cool stuff with the pop-up. I think one of the cooler ones are like the video, being able to pop up video and a map. I don't know. This was just introduced in 1.2, and it's a super, super useful widget. The third thing is the touch-friendly inputs. And I think this is one of the most important points. Being able to enter in data into web applications and websites is really, really important. So the fact that you have touch-friendly forms right out of the box with jQuery Mobile is really, really awesome. So this would be a default form, and then mobilized, now you can actually use that form. With a slider, honestly, I've looked for good touch-friendly sliders that work on desktop too, and jQuery Mobile is, as far as I know, one of the only sliders that works really well. So I had a product page, and I needed the slider, so I downloaded my own custom version of jQuery Mobile, which I'll show you how to do in the future, or in a little bit. You can use a custom build just to get that slider. Similar to what you do with jQuery UI. So you can use any of these widgets independently. So moving on with the forms, if you have a phone in portrait view, the labels will stack vertically. If you switch it to landscape, you'll get the form input labels on the left, so you're better utilizing the space of the phone. This is the slider I mentioned. Works well. Search input, it's basically the same thing that what I showed you, the filter, the list filtering, basically just uses the search input. So it's really nice that jQuery Mobile kind of is reusing these bits and these different widgets. It's just reusing it throughout the framework in different interesting ways. The checkbox set, I mentioned pushing checkboxes is hard on a mobile device. This makes it easier. And then you can use that data attribute for making it horizontal if you want to make it a horizontal list. Radio button set. Dip switch has a kind of interesting markup. It's a select list with a couple of options, which I find to be kind of interesting, but I mean, I guess it makes sense, option 1, option 2, and on an older device, you'd still be able to use it. So I think is the native menu default now?
Yeah, it's the default.
Yeah, so it's default now, but you can use jQuery Mobile's select list, which I actually find is really pretty nice. You can just use data native menu equals false in order to get that. So with text areas, if you've ever tried to use a text area on a mobile device, it's totally painful. If you get past those 2 lines that they give you, you're now in no man's land, and in order to get back up, you have to 2-finger scroll, and who knows how to do that, right? So jQuery Mobile out of the box just says, hey, let's auto-grow these text areas. So if you go to any jQuery Mobile site, yeah, as you go down, it grows. So, yeah. HTML5 input types, you should be using these. It's not really a jQuery mobile thing, but it's just good to know about. You can use type equals password, right? It'll look like a password input. And then you can use type equals number, and you'll get a number keyboard. And then people are like, well, what if that browser doesn't support type equals number? Well, it just falls back to text. So it's just a text input if the browser doesn't understand it. Type equals email adds the @ symbol. URL adds the / and the .com. Just makes it a lot easier to enter in data into your forms if you use these. Type equals tel. A lot of people use type equals tel actually for regular number inputs, just FYI. Some miscellaneous notes. With the widgets, I mentioned each individual widget, you can download them with the download builder. You can there's all these different widgets that they're coming out with, and this is the download builder. So you can go to the download builder and download your own custom version. So in the case, I just need under widgets, I just need the pop-up widget, and that'll auto pre-fill what I need. I can download that, and it'll actually be a small base to work with. So your website will load a little faster because there's a little less JavaScript on the page. So recommended, just download the parts that you need. Some snippets that are helpful. Configuring jQuery mobile, you have to bind to mobile init and then change the options in there in order for it to work. And then document ready becomes page create, because in jQuery mobile land, as we mentioned, new pages are pulled in with Ajax. And so you're not having a full page reload every time you go to a new web page, right? So it's actually when the page is created is now the document ready, because you're grabbing the HTML, then you're creating the page. That's your new document ready. When you modify the DOM, you'll have to trigger create on different UI components, and then that'll add the styling to it. With individual widgets, you'll have to say like .slider, but yeah. A couple of notes: always use the viewport tag. So people get started and not know that they have to use a viewport tag. Viewport tag just makes the actual device width the width of the browser window. So if your device is 320 pixels wide, it's going to be 320 pixels when you actually go to the website. So you want to set that, because by default, I think iOS is like 800 or something like that. So if you include the viewport tag, you'll be able to get the actual expected results. And another thing is, like I was talking about Sencha versus jQuery mobile. With jQuery mobile, there's no like JavaScript fake scrolling. Like with Sencha, they try to get all the performance out of the device on specific browsers, so they use like a fake JavaScript scrolling. in this case, jQuery Mobile doesn't do any of that. And if you need, if you need a part of your page to be scrolling, like on WebKit, you can use the overflow touch. But even there's some weird issues with it. So just jQuery Mobile's approach is just use what the browser gives you, which is just a regular scrolling. And then with the CSS transitions, I showed you, with CSS transitions, I showed you the new kind of turn. I didn't show turn, but I showed flow. But there's those new transitions. But then the Android flip transition is like totally retarded. It does like a cartwheel, which is, yeah, who wants their page to do a cartwheel? But what jQuery Mobile does now with transitions is it says, does this device support hardware acceleration? And if it does, it gives it the full transition. And if it doesn't, it'll actually fall back to fade. So there was actually quite a few people when alpha came out, they're like, oh, jQuery Mobile is slow or whatever. It doesn't feel right. Well, a lot of times they're using old crappy devices, and they were trying to get the new transitions and or nice transitions, and their browser doesn't support hardware acceleration, so that's gonna feel clunky. So now all of the transitions are hardware accelerated, and only if your device supports it will you see the really nice transitions. Plugins and resources, go to jQueryMobile.com/resources. There's tons of stuff on there, lots of plugins, lots of great stuff. And then I think probably the biggest frustration I've seen is people wanting to initialize their JavaScript on certain pages, right? So since you get the initial payload with jQuery Mobile, and then you're loading in just fragments of HTML, people are like, well, how do I execute new JavaScript on the new pages? Like, how does that work? What should I do? And what you can do is use something like the jQuery Mobile router, which you can add the ID of the page. I think you might be able to do the full route as well. But then your JavaScript handlers, or your handlers for these different events, will actually run on that page only. And so recommended, check out jQuery Mobile router. But to me, when I looked at jQuery Mobile router, I thought, man, this is great because you can bind to any event. But to me, it was kind of overkill. It's like I really only need when the page initializes, or I'm changing back to the same page. So I created jQuery Mobile Router Lite, which basically gives you a really, really simple and small API to handle this. Basically, I give you two methods, route init. So the initial visit to that route, you execute this JavaScript, right? And then if you come back to it, like route change, so now every time you change to that route, it will execute that JavaScript. And to me, that's more simple than that API. So I'm actually using this in production in a few jQuery mobile apps, and I find it makes it a lot easier because I can just say on this route do this thing, or on this page, it's got page in it as well. So take a look at that. It's just jQuery Mobile Router Lite. It's on my GitHub, and then there are like iOS themes, and I think there's even a Metro theme for Microsoft, and people say, well, what if I wanted to feel a lot more like a native app in my phone? Well, you can. One strategy is you could serve. You could sniff for iOS devices and give them the iOS theme, and then everybody else could get some other theme. That's a strategy. I'm not currently doing it. I just use the jQuery Mobile's universal way of rendering things. But this is interesting, and that's all I have. So thanks. Any questions? Yeah.
So the data dash whatever seems a little bit like inline styles. Is there like a way to do it more globally so everything like maybe with the same class, but in the same way, or?
So, well, the thing with inline styles is that's just purely CSS. And there's actually behavior attached to elements, right? So if you have a slider, there's actually JavaScript that powers that slider. So using the data attribute to declare that this is indeed a slider, or maybe that's not the best example, but you're describing more of the role of what this element is supposed to do, right? And then that initializes JavaScript, and it injects like actual full HTML markup and some CSS classes that styles that individual widget. So it's not just style; it's actually behavior as well. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I'm talking like more like a consistency. So like every time you have, you know, this form element, it's always sort of behaving in the same way, as opposed to like having to put a behavior tag on each one of them.
Yeah. So I think by default, forms are initialized to work as jQuery mobile widgets, right? So in that case, your forms are already kind of auto-enhanced. But I don't know if there's like, I mean, it's just basically certain widgets that you need to add those roles. I think slider is just, yeah, so in this case, it's just like input type range. I don't even know that you need.
Yeah, that's right. So a lot of the form fields, you don't have to annotate with data attributes. Yeah. Those will get automatically styled.
Right. But yeah.
Lists, there are a few that need to be explicitly enhanced with data attributes, like lists and like grids and things like that. But your form fields, those will implicitly by jQuery Mobile get auto-enhanced for you.
But I'm also seeing like even the anchor tags are getting data attributes. Is there a way to set like a global data attribute for all anchor tags?
No. So with links, they're auto Ajaxified. So if you have a page that's local that you're linking to, it will just kind of do its thing, right? But if you want that page to look like, that new page to look like a dialog, then you add data-rel equals dialog. So it's more, you're giving behavioral descriptors for your HTML, and there are things that are automatically turned into jQuery mobile stuff like form inputs.
So there's sensible defaults, and you're really only using data attributes for the exceptions?
Right. For the different widgets, like the pop-out widget, right? You need to describe some things about that pop-out widget or whatever, right? So it's giving you more language, I guess. More, descriptors for HTML. Yeah?
So I want to make sure I'm getting this right, but it sounds like the big thing with jQuery Mobile is the JavaScript behavior and functionality can be controlled by these HTML5 data attributes. Or much of it can be, right?
Yeah, I mean, the goal is to get everything to work well on mobile, right? And then also work well on desktop. And you have these data attributes that allows you to describe the HTML, it gives you more like widgets and functionality than is provided just in the regular browser, right? The browser only gives you so many things, right? And jQuery Mobile is giving you, now it gives you a slider, it gives you, and these things aren't built in the browser. Yes, they're coming, like with HTML5 slider is coming, but it's not really there yet. So you're providing a rich set of widgets, and then forms are now usable, and then you also have layout and theming. Like, the browser doesn't give you anything to do with theming, right? But here you can just drag and drop create your theme for all of those widgets that I described. So yeah, I mean that's basically it.
So if let's say I add a data attribute for a widget I want to have a dialogue behavior, if I want to be able to customize things with that now? Would I still, you know, write some JavaScript with setting the options for the behavior of that dialogue, or?
Yeah, so in the case of the dialogue,
That's a good example.
yeah,
or
I'm
what
not,
saying.
yeah, some of them have, some of the widgets have various options, right? Different behaviors, but I mean, really, you're just understanding what the framework provides you, and you're using the data attributes to use the kind of canned functionality in the framework. And you can write your own plugins if you want. Like I wrote a long content dialogue, which in the case of the dialogue, it's more meant for like one page or one small like snippet of content. But I wrote a long page dialogue, which all I did was add a couple classes to like the actual page container, and I think that's I didn't really do much in that plugin, but it has like a plugin architecture where you can kind of just hook in, add your own data attributes, and you can customize the various options to make the widgets do different things. I mean, most of the time you're just, to me, when I'm using jQuery mobile, most of the time is just extending the existing CSS classes, to make them more customized. And I'm really just describing all my markup with data attributes, and then, I'm writing custom JavaScript if it's, like a more intense web application. I've got geolocation, I've got these kinds of things I write on top. But I mean, I'm mostly using jQuery mobile as it is. I'm not doing a whole lot of customizing, even when I'm building pretty big web applications.
Yeah, it looks like it supplies a lot of the features you just hit the ground running with, and
Right.
you shouldn't have to worry about
And there's a lot of
customizing it.
plugins on jQueryMobile.com/resources. There's a lot of plugins. There's like a Google Maps plugin, and there's all sorts of plugins, and people are building more and more things, just like they did around jQuery. So, yeah.
Do you find yourself now, do you ever still create a website where you just have one version for everything and you kind of got it restyled and reshuffled with jQuery mobile? Or do you pretty much have a separate page for jumping off to the mobile application feeling version of
Yeah.
of the
So that's a, like, from my perspective, it's really difficult to inject jQuery mobile into an existing website. You can do it, but it's kind of more, you start with jQuery mobile and then you build your website. And ideally, you make a mobile first version and then you enhance it to a desktop version with responsive design, but not everybody necessarily knows how to do that or even wants to do that. Some people want just a mobile M.dot site, right? And a lot of times where the first time people use jQuery mobile is for their M.dot site. You check out, is this a mobile device? And I think Josh will get into some strategies for that. Is this a mobile device? And then let's flip them to the M.dot website, so m.mydomain.com, and then that's running jQuery mobile. But then another strategy is once you have that M.dot website, you can then enhance it with media queries and then replace your full site with it. That I think that's sort of where things are going, but I think it's going to take a while to get there. But right now, most people are just like, hey, is this a mobile device? Serve an M.dot website. It's running jQuery mobile. That's the common use case. I'm just saying you can use it for desktop as well.
And how much of the latter have you done, where you started mobile first and then you built the full website on top of that using media queries like yours?
Yeah, so I've consulted more on a high level for some fairly significant platforms to do this. It's just, it's been a real tough challenge explaining the benefits and, to like high level VPs and execs of like, how does this help you and how does this help you going forward having one website? And, I think there are strong there's strong value there, right, to having one website that works everywhere. But it is somewhat of a pipe dream. You do have to, to look at your full desktop application and say that it's going to work, if I redo it on mobile and then make it work on desktop. You end up having to really rethink your application and simplify, and start with the core essentials. And I think the M.Dot website is a really great place to start that. And just be like, how do I rethink my application? What are the core essential things? And then start with that. Design it as, sort of mobile first, right? And then you can look at that mobile version and say, well, what would it take to what media queries would it take, and what kind of JavaScript would it take to make this work on desktop? And would it make sense for my particular application? I think there's a lot of application out there that would benefit a ton from being simplified for mobile, and then enhanced to desktop. Their site would load much faster, and all of these great benefits would come from just having one version of your code base. But it's not for everyone, and there aren't a whole lot of big platform plays that are able to kind of get behind that and move to it. I think they're just more or less what I see is going to the M.Dot site. And then, I've experimented building fairly robust web applications and websites that work both on mobile and desktop. It's just, I don't feel like it's there yet in the sort of global mind share. It's like people don't really recognize that you can start mobile and then fresh and then kind of enhance that to desktop. They're only thinking mobile. And so, and there are responsive websites out there. It's just, it's just few and far between where I see they actually enhance that mobile to desktop. So, yeah.